Does it cross the dimensions of cult sci-fi adventure, or does it crash into a wall? We watched the adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension from 1984 to see if we could redeem it. Were we successful? Find out after the theme!
Is it too good to be bad? So bad it's good. What's this movie? Do you think we should? It's got bad dialogue, dodgy creatures, but we want to know what the redeeming features.
Boy? Oh boy.
Hello and welcome to the Rufus Project podcast, this time checking out the adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension from 1984. I am one of your hosts, Trevor Holland, and I am joined by my good friend and co-host,
Kristian Fletcher. Thank you so much, Trevor. It's great to be back, and what a mouthful that title is.
Not since Deathbed, the Bed That Eats, was there a title that's going to be so much fun to say, because you know I have to say the full movie every time.
Exactly. And here's me all these years referring to it as just Buckaroo Banzai, and all this time I've been leaving half the title out.
No, you can't do that. I mean, you know, what would happen if they ever did the World Crime League? But that's what we can get back to later.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think we're still waiting for, but...
It's only been, 34 years?
Yeah, you never know. Some things take longer for sequels, so we'll see. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
So I did suggest this movie. So if anyone watched the movie in preparation for this podcast, it is my fault. I won't say whether or not I apologize until later, because that's what we're working towards. So, if you haven't seen The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension from 1984 at this point, I have a synopsis for you. Adventurer, brain surgeon, rock musician Buckaroo Banzai and his crime-fighting team, the Hong Kong Cavaliers, must stop evil alien invaders from the 8th dimension who are planning to conquer Earth.
Oh gosh, I wish I had that plot summary before I went in. That seems to make it seem so much more compact and neat. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll address this now, because the synopsis, they weren't really planning to conquer Earth. They really just wanted to get back to Planet 10. That was my takeaway from the movie. So I'm actually disputing the synopsis from IMDb right here and now. That was my understanding. The Earth was in danger, but the actual alien invaders were trapped there, basically, and were just trying to get home.
And actually, yeah, more that I think about it, because look, I'm going to tell you going straight in that I'm so confused from this movie. So I'm honestly thinking your way of saying it, Trevor, makes a little bit more sense, if that's a word you can use for this movie. But yeah, I have heard, I think, John Lithgow saying that it's actually a really hard movie to explain the plot. You could still say it all, you know. I think I read a quote saying you could tell people an hour the plot of this movie and they'd still wonder what it's about.
We'll just say it right now. This, like, with no judgment on the movie itself, but I will say it's a very busy movie.
Definitely. So much happening. It's a lot of ideas, which I don't know if you can enlighten us with the in the trivia side of things, but I'm wondering if there was a lot to do with the production of the film as well, that the idea might not have come across that was intended.
Yeah, well, we shall get there, but before we do, now we do like to look at any awards the film may have won. This one didn't win any, but it did get a few nominations. So it was nominated for a Saturn Award by the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy and Horror Films for Best Supporting Actor for John Lithgow and Best Writing for Earl MacRausch. The Casting Society of America nominated it for an Artios Award for Best Casting for a Feature Film. And the Young Artist Awards had the nominee for the Young Artist Award for Best Young Supporting Actor in a Motion Picture, Musical, Comedy, Adventure or Drama for Damon Hines, and it was also nominated for the Best Family Motion Picture Adventure at the same awards.
So it did get some kind of notice anyway, so it might not have been the big dud that we all think it was. Because I believe it did sort of come and go and barely made its budget back, I think, in the first couple of weeks when it first was released.
Yeah, well, we shall definitely get there. But I'll tell you what, the casting, I know I touched on it last week, but my God, the cast of this movie.
I know, what a cast list, and that's the thing. I can see why it won an award for that too.
Yeah. So just going from the top on IMDb, Peter Weller, John Lithgow, Ellen Barkin, Jeff Goldblum, Christopher Lloyd, Lewis Smith, Rosalind Cash, who I know has been in a few things, Clancy Brown, and there's even more beyond that. I mean, that's just just at the start. There's a lot of familiar faces in there as well.
And so it's probably a good movie. It's probably one that we probably haven't, we should have touched on before now, I think, due to a cast list like that too. And one of those movies that I believe always comes up in the list of, top 50 or top 100 cult films of all time. So it was probably quite sacrilege that I hadn't seen it.
That's all good. We can't see them all.
Exactly.
But we're getting there.
We will touch on them if we can.
Absolutely. So to move on to the Turkey trivia, so we'll talk a bit of Turkey about the movie first before moving on to the trivia. It is rated 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb. It had a budget in 1984, remember, of $12 million, which is quite a bit for the time. And its box office came in at a grand total of $6.2 million.
Ooh, so yeah, a big loss for them, and especially, I suppose, if they were, I don't know, because this kind of predates a lot of those sort of science fiction films, like, not science fiction, but the sort of fantasy adventure films like Back to the Future and other movies like this, so maybe it just, wasn't quite ready for that boom at the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Back to the Future. I mean, certainly with the jet car, there was definitely a good Back to the Future vibe there. And with the ability to see aliens when everybody else saw them disguised as human also gave me a big They Live vibe.
Oh, so definitely, yes.
It's almost like, well, did those movies actually get inspiration from this movie?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think I did read somewhere saying it's one of those cases where every movie since Buckaroo Banzai has been, is noted, but it was actually the first to do a lot of these things. So maybe it wasn't quite given the credit it was due.
Who knows? But moving on to the trivia I could confirm, and then I've got a little bit of trivia which didn't pop up, but I'm sure I've heard it before, but we'll get to it. So when it came time to film the end title sequence where Buckaroo and pals are walking around at Los Angeles Aqueduct and step to the music, the actual music wasn't ready. So the composer told the crew to use the song Uptown Girl by Billy Joel because it had the exact same tempo. So those scenes were filmed with Uptown Girl blaring from a boombox tied to the back of a camera truck. I now want to re-watch that.
Yeah, now I'm trying to imagine them doing it in time with that. Quite interesting bit of trivia there.
That would be hilarious,
yeah.
I think. Now, John Lithgow's dialect coach, Robert Terminelli, was a tailor on the 20th Century Fox lot with a very heavy Italian accent. So John had Roberto speak his lines into a tape recorder, which he then used to practice the accent. John then got him credit in the movie as the dialect coach.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because he would have realised such a big part of his performance. And John Lithgow is a big part of this movie, and you can really see that he, put a lot of work into it as well. And it's probably one of his better character roles, I think.
He was something. So further on from that, according to Peter Weller, he had a very tough time filming the scene where Lord John Wharfen, played by John Lithgow, is torturing him with electricity because that was the first time he had come face to face with John Lithgow and that Italian/Martian accent, and he was trying very, very hard not to break into laughter.
Oh, it would have been hard, especially as he's chewing the scenery up there, but in the greatest possible way.
Yes. I think John Lithgow put a few pounds on chewing scenery in this movie.
Yeah.
Now, Peter Weller wasn't the original person considered for the role of Buckaroo Banzai. They originally wanted Tom Hanks.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. It would have ended up being a very different movie, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just, again, picturing Tom Hanks as Buckaroo Banzai, and it's just, I'm seeing a very different movie.
Yes.
Especially Tom Hanks in the early 80s, it's, yep.
Yeah, I don't think it would fit the look.
And so Peter Weller has stated that he drew inspiration from Elia Kazan, Adam Ant, and Jacques Cousteau and combined them to help make his persona for Buckaroo Banzai.
Look, I can see the Adam Ant resemblance, actually. The others, maybe not so much.
Jacques Cousteau, off exploring and discovering new things.
Yeah, I suppose.
I can see that one. Anyway, now the other thing I had heard previously, and this was when there was talk about a potential TV series being released on one of the streaming networks for the adventures of Buckaroo Banzai against the World Crime Syndicate, which was being discussed last year with potentially having Kevin Smith at the helm, was that this particular movie, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, was deliberately written to be a sequel to a movie that was never made.
Okay. Wow.
But yeah, I don't have any solid things backing that up, but that's something I had heard previously.
Yeah, I had heard the Kevin Smith connection anyway. I think had come up. I think when I was looking at this movie the other day, looking it up. So, yeah. So you never know. And with the streaming networks the way they are, I think it could be very possible and very likely.
I'll reserve any comment on how I feel about that until towards the end.
Yes, definitely. I don't want to get it out of you too early.
That's all good. So basically on the Rufus Project here, we're here for the purpose of checking out these movies to see if we can redeem them. But to do that, we need to set ourselves a baseline. So I've got a review here, which lets us know what we're working from. The title of this review is Terrible, Terrible Movie. People need to be warned. Do not waste your money or time on this movie. I bought it thinking there would be some space travel in it. There's very little, just shots of alien ships near Earth. The script is a mess, a total incomprehensible story. Listening to John Lithgow, Third Rock from the Sun, a show which I loved, go on a rambling speech about who knows what. The acting is terrible. The only good thing about it was a rocket-propelled truck going 500 miles per hour. Ellen Barkin in a nothing role, but it helped to pay a few bills, I guess. What a jumbled up mess. 1 star.
Ooh, interesting. Well, I've got to reserve some of my comments from having heard that too. So that definitely is one that we can hopefully only move up from or sideways from, so we shall see.
We shall see. But I know we've had a good run of this, but I'm sorry, Kristian, I did break the 90-minute barrier, but not by much.
Oh, not by much. And I think being the fact that it is such a busy movie, it doesn't really lag too much in terms of it seemed to go by so fast. So I'll forgive you this once, Trevor.
That's okay. And we got to see the MGM line again.
Oh, I know. It's always so good seeing that again. And it always seems to give things a bit of I don't know, a bit of class. I don't know whether the movie necessarily lives up to it, but straight from the line raw into what you think's going to be not Flash Gordon, I'm thinking of the porno version. Flash Gordon. Straight into Flash Gordon territory. Because, not going in, I was sort of expecting a hybrid of Flash Gordon and Tank Girl. And I suppose I wasn't really disappointed in that respect because it definitely did sort of feel like that, definitely from the outset as well with those opening credits.
Yeah, although that font and that logo was so 80s with the synth music playing in the background. I just wanted to get my hypercolor t-shirt out of storage.
I had to put down my Walkman and watch properly.
put on some leg warmers and if I had hair, it would be permed by the time I got to the end of this movie. That's how 80s it was.
I'm disappointed you weren't wearing the leg warmers already, Trevor, for watching this movie. But definitely. And then you've got the traditional opening scroll, which I think we've seen on many movies in the Rufus Project, even ones that don't fit necessarily this superhero style. But this seemed like a perfect movie to have an opening scroll, actually.
Yeah, I think, and with that opening text, because it does go into quite a lot of detail, which I think kind of supports the theory that as a style choice, this was made as if it was a sequel to a previous movie. And yeah, but it certainly took a lot of the mystery out straight away. It's just like, oh yeah, so Buckaroo Banzai, he's all these things, and he is a lot of things. What, a surgeon, a singer, an adventurer, an inventor, a scientist, and stuff like that. And then right towards the end, and he was being watched by aliens who were in orbit above the planet Earth. It's like that's seems to be a pretty important chunk of plot that could have easily been revealed in the movie itself.
Yeah.
But it's just laid right out there at the very, very start.
And I think, like what you said, being a supposed sequel to I suppose a fake movie or something like that, yeah, it's almost probably, we're supposed to be aware of possibly already what's happening to this character, or as you said, it was definitely a style choice.
Yeah, and I do like when they're going through the cast list, they're doing all the main ones, and then it gets to also starring, and then you go things like Jeff Goldblum and Clancy Brown under the also starring role. So it's like, it's not just with or including or featuring, it's like also starring. It's like they're basically saying that, yeah, everybody in this movie is a star, which wasn't far from the truth, really.
Definitely. And I even felt that with Buckaroo Banzai, like, even though he's the title character, there's still a lot of other screen time for a lot of other characters, which I think is a good thing, especially in a movie that has a cast list like this. No one was sort of underutilized too much, so...
Yeah, there was a lot of use of everybody.
Except for, anyway, I'm going a bit too ahead of myself, but yeah, I'm thinking offhand maybe Christopher Lloyd might have been a bit underutilized in this movie, but maybe he's part of the also starring section.
Yeah, I think. Basically, he just was like one of the, you got like Buckaroo Banzai and the Hong Kong Cavaliers. I like that band name.
Yeah,
I do like the Hong Kong Cavaliers as a band name. It's a good band name. And then of course John Lithgow as the main alien dude. So I think everybody else beyond that really, I suppose, falls into the role of supporting cast, and that's where Christopher Lloyd kind of fits in there. But when he did turn up, he was Christopher Lloyding it up the best you've ever seen a Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, and from what I read, he was very happy about his experience on the film and speaks highly of it. So he would have been happy with the role by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, Christopher Lloyd, he's always good value, especially later on. I think even under all the alien makeup, there was a scene later in the movie where John Lithgow was basically just saying that he's like the worst henchman ever, and then in the background, Christopher Lloyd in full alien makeup just gives him the finger.
Oh, yeah.
It was just like, I felt like applauding.
There were a couple of bits like that towards, I think, the end of the film where the alien characters started to use all these one-liners, and especially that whole reference to, was it Big Booty? And it's Big Booty.
Yeah, Big Booty.
That became quite a running thing, but it wasn't overutilized. Like, it was funny. So, but yeah, they kind of gave them a bit of character as well. Yeah, we're going all over the place. Sorry about that.
That's fine. I mean, look, I do try to stop this becoming a recap of the movie because, we're just meant to talk about our experience watching it. We don't need to recap it. But one thing I did notice was all the technology was so 80s and so chunky and so green monitors with big, bold text and fluoro colors. And you're sort of going, I can't fault that. That is just glorious. I appreciate my HD TV to watch this on, but what I would give for a bank of computer monitors set up as 80s tech. That would be glorious.
And it's funny because we've come just out of this quite synth soundtrack and this really 80s looking opening credits and these very 80s looking machine. I think there's even a shot, I think it might be early on, where there's people that look like they're obviously wearing flares. So already it's so dated. So I was actually quite surprised because it's not normally a film that you would choose of this period. I know we saw, I think of late have been looking at more recent movies. So I think it was a bit of a welcome change.
You can't fault its world building. There's one thing you have to give it, and it doesn't waste much time in sort of like showing that lots of stuff's going on. I mean, they're setting up for this big test of this rocket car, and people are saying how fast you can go, and other people aren't believing them. In the meantime, Buckaroo Banzai's off with Jeff Goldblum performing brain surgery on someone to help that. I mean, I was trying to work it out. Was they trying to make him telepathic or something? He could read minds, or he could control something with his mind, given the procedure that was being done by Buckaroo Banzai, who just then suddenly appears just walking from out of a cloud of dust and just calmly sits into the car like just before the countdown starts.
Yeah, as I said, I scratched my head a lot through this movie, and that was one part that I was a bit confused about too.
Yeah, because it just cuts back and forth just so quickly, and it's just there's no real context for it.
And I felt that opening sort of 10 or 15 minutes in general was just very confusing, and I think it was because you're also getting used to the style of this movie as well, too, where so much is thrown at you. But unfortunately, it comes across a bit messy at times because of it. But I think I actually read, again, going into a bit of tech stuff here, read that the editors felt that they were very limited with what they had to use to edit this movie together. So there was a lot of close shots and not so much coverage shots. So that sort of, I think, is a lot to do why there's so much happening in virtually every frame.
True. And so much technobabble. I mean...
Oh, the jargon.
Seriously,
oh, my God.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm up there with the technobabble, but trying to understand what they were saying a lot of the time, it's just like saying... I'm sure that was important. Are they going to clear it? No, they're not. They're just basically using all this technobabble. Especially, and when they cut to, like, they had this control center in the in his truck, and, like, right from the very, very start, like, you got 4 people in there and it's crowded, and as more characters got introduced and as more characters came on the scene, more and more people were piling into the control center. So you got all these people just jammed together in this tiny little area. I was feeling claustrophobic watching it, sitting back on my couch, a fair way back from the screen. Yeah. And I was just going, there's too many people.
That's, I think, one of those situations where they didn't have enough coverage shots. So it's like every character has to feel like they're virtually sitting on your lap, I think.
Essentially, after all this control stuff, we get to see Buckaroo Banzai be a rebel, go off course, and drive through a mountain with a bit of fluoro green laser effects.
And I wouldn't be surprised, like we were saying about Back to the Future being inspired, especially even that bit there, that would have been ripped off straight out of Buckaroo Banzai, I think. But yeah, definitely fulfilled their end of making it seem as 80s as possible.
Yeah, and also fulfills their need of... for the subtitle of Across the Eighth Dimension, because this is like the only time anyone ever actually goes across the eighth dimension is this one very brief scene of quite trippy, almost psychedelic imagery as he drives through a solid mountain and comes out the other side with the car covered in goo and some weird brain thing stuck to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which doesn't do much. You never actually find out what that is. It just appears in a jar a bit later on and never gets mentioned again.
Makes you think that there's so many ideas that were possibly thrown on the table and ended up on the cutting room floor, or things that would have possibly made a lot more sense if it was possibly a longer movie. You do wonder, because it does feel like it's very disjointed in that respect, like a lot of subplots that are just sort of, or sub things that are mentioned and just never seem to go anywhere.
Yeah, very much. I think you just summed up a great deal of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
But one thing that Trip Through the Mountain does, and particularly the news coverage of it does, is it does let us get introduced to John Lithgow and his abode in the mental ward.
And that first shot we sort of see of his face, and I think I start zooming out, and you're like, he hasn't really changed that much. Like, you couldn't mistake him for anybody else.
Yeah, well, Susie was watching it with me, and she said, because we actually watched the first Incredibles with the kids the other day, and she was saying how much that John Lithgow reminded her of Syndrome from The Incredibles.
Yeah, see, I don't know The Incredibles. Is that the father from it, is it? Or
no, that's like the bad guy. Who's got, like,
okay. Yeah, I've never seen it, actually. Shame on me.
This very high hair and everything like that. But yeah, so we briefly see John Lithgow in this mental asylum, and he has a bit of a are to do with the with the one of the custodians, and they literally have him look thoughtful into the distance to trigger a flashback of his experiment with the tech that Buckaroo used to go through the mountain, where he ends up stuck in a wall and gets possessed by one of these aliens.
But it's so good that they give us that kind of recap, because as I said, I was quite confused. So, but at least we sort of get that background on him, and the fact that he tried to do it himself as well, and sort of a bit of a reason why he's the weirdo that he is now.
Yeah, I think this was a section of the movie that actually made the most sense. It was just nice, self-contained, and it was contextual. You know, the cut back to the flashback and then back to the modern times. You know, it was in context, but with every other change, because you know you go from that and then suddenly this guy you've seen doing brain surgery and driving a rocket car and then flying through a mountain, suddenly rocks up with a band on a stage playing this instrument of music, and he's there. He's got the guitar, then he's got a trumpet, then he starts singing to Ellen Barkin, who over the noise of the crowd and the band, he can hear the one person crying in the room.
Yeah, she's pretty much just there. I don't. You mentioned that review earlier where Ellen Barkin's sort of not given too much to do, but I think in this scene she was just told to cry as much as possible. That musical number just was so unexpected, but it felt so 80s at the same time.
Again, this was so 80s. I almost started wearing fluoro. My clothes almost spontaneously combusted into fluoro, you know.
And what I found really interesting too is being, you know, Buckaroo Banzai and the sort of the Japanese connection. They'd sort of trope's probably not the right word, but they'd do things like bow like Japanese would at the end of their number. I think it was the end of that. Like a lot of things like that they'd do to carry on, which was kind of clever. But again, you're still so confused about who this guy even is, what his background is. Again, wishing you'd seen that first movie that doesn't exist.
Yeah, because I think in the opening crawl they talk about, you know, he had an American father and a Japanese mother.
Ah, that's right. Yeah,
and they were murdered by some dude who apparently they were going to have some of the so they were going to add some extra scenes of the guy that murdered his parents into this movie to help set up the World Crime League, but they end up on the cutting room floor, which is probably a good thing, because this movie didn't need any more subplots.
Oh, I know. Whoa. I was still reeling. I know that's the thing. We were still only like 15 minutes into the movie at this stage, and I'm like, what is happening? Talk about an assault on the senses.
Yeah, well, 50 minutes of the movie, he starts singing the song to the sad girl who's so moved by it, she pulls out a gun and gets ready to shoot herself. It's like, what? Where did that come from? Oh. That's dark and I mean, I'm trying to remember, how did they stop her shooting? I think she just got bumped. That was the only thing that stopped her from shooting herself. Someone just bumped her.
Yeah.
And she gets arrested for apparently attempted murder of Buckaroo Banzai, which I guess is the greatest crime you can possibly commit in this universe.
Yeah. And hey, so she ends up pretty much in prison there, and I'm trying to remember what the next bit is. Again, it goes all over the place, but she ends up in prison, and I was going to say, but Buckaroo Banzai, I think we're going to a press conference, which Buckaroo Banzai is kind of, you know, the man of the moment. They're asking him all about time travel and all that sort of stuff. Again, a chance for them to use some tech talk that would have gone over my head.
But yeah, he was on the way to that conference, and he swings by the jail, and basically has a brief talk to her, and then tells them to release her, and he'll take full responsibility for her. And she ends up on the panel in the press conference.
Yeah, I was surprised why she was there as well.
and even actually says, and then says this, her own little bit of technobabble, which she just rattles off, and then goes, "Oh, sorry, I'm probably totally wrong." No, you're not. You're totally right. Look, you're a smart, depressive, suicidal
crier.
Crier.
Yeah, again, her part in it, you'd think there was a lot more to it that probably was cut out. So I don't know. We're supposed to have known a lot more, but yep, she seemed to know more about time travel than we were expecting. So
yeah. Well, not so much interdimensional travel.
yeah, got to get it right, especially with this movie.
Yes. It's not quite Back to the Future. If Back to the Future was about dimensional travel, then it'd be a very similar movie.
Yeah, a bit of a blatant rip-off then, so they get away with it.
They do. And I'll tell you what else they get away with. Jeff Goldblum wearing a pink cowboy outfit. Oh.
That was hilarious.
So glorious. And he does it well. And I think he even justifies it, like the other Hong Kong Cavaliers are coming out as like giving him a look up and down. And so making a few comments, and he's there. He's just accepting it. He's you know, we're on our way. I thought we were on our way to the gig. I got my spurs on.
Yeah,
it's like.
Yeah, it suited him so well, and I was getting such a what is it, the good old boys from Blues Brothers. I was getting such a vibe of that as he comes out with their little truck and everything. But yeah, it suited him well. And again, Jeff Goldblum's one of those people that just never seems to change, even from 1984 to now, you know. But he suited that role so well.
Yeah, I don't ever want him to change.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum can keep on Jeff Goldbluming. I mean, I was happy for him to Jeff Goldblum in Thank God It's Friday. So you know.
And hey, he survived that. So yeah, so much happening. I'm trying to even remember what the next bit was too. But
look, it doesn't matter what the next bit was. It was either going to be a shot of Technobabble, a shot of people crowding in a control room, a shot of Buckaroo Banzai being told that the president is on the phone.
Yeah. Confused. And I've got here all the shots of the floating space coral.
Oh yeah. The giant spaceship that was just hovering in orbit that they didn't notice until somebody told them that it was there.
Yeah, no. So that's the thing, like, the tone of this movie, it does make you think it's full of in-jokes, or it's supposed to be very comedic. Like, I know we mentioned things like the aliens doing the finger and a couple of little witty one-liners, but a lot of that other sort of, those sort of in-jokes, it feels like, very much go over your head, and I feel like I'm sort of not privy to half of what was happening.
Yeah, I mean, like the choices, like with the aliens. So, I mean, to give you a bit of explanational plot here. So essentially, there's a bunch of aliens from Planet 10 who got banished to the 8th dimension by another bunch of aliens from Planet 10. The bad guy aliens are all basically, you've got your Christopher Lloyd. John Lithgow is human but possessed by one, and basically they're all these guys running around, Caucasian guys running around in business suits. The good aliens are all like Rastafarians.
Oh, that's... Yeah, I can't remember. There was a name of one of them, and they go, "Oh, no offense" or something. There was even a reference. I can't remember what part it was, but they even make some jokes about that as well.
Yeah, or I think the first one turns up who gets sent down to try to get in touch with Buckaroo Banzai, and he rocks up to the gate of the compound that he lives in, complete with guards on the gates. And as he's walking up, you just got these random voices from off screen going, "Nice jacket. What's in the pink box?" Why have those comments even in there? They did absolutely nothing. They didn't achieve anything to have just these random people mocking this guy from off screen. You're going, why? And then it cuts back to inside, and they're talking some other technobabble, and Jeff Goldblum suddenly discovers that War of the Worlds was real.
Oh, I know. Oh. Look, I'm thinking about those voices off camera. They could have. It's like they said it when they were filming and forgot to edit it out. But yeah, like you mentioned, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said about, they're very good at setting up their own universe, and I think you've just got to throw things like this in as, okay, it's part of this movie and part of the universe it's in, and let's just go with the flow, because I think if you tried to analyze too much of it, you wouldn't be able to.
True.
Some interesting choices, though. Interesting style choices.
Yeah, like when he takes off because they're at the press conference. They've got to wrap it up quickly because there's a Harley Davidson convention coming in. And that's there purely so when he gets zapped, when Buckaroo Banzai gets zapped by some energy, which lets him see the bad aliens as they really are, aka they live. There's a handy motorbike for him to jump on and give chase, and he's giving chase, and then suddenly it's nighttime.
Yeah.
Just like, no context. It's just, it's nighttime, and we've got people hunting.
Yeah, I was confused about that.
Okay, and it's just like, and then you do get a shot of Buckaroo on the bike in the trees in the dark. It's like, why is it suddenly nighttime? Has he been following these guys for absolute hours? Yet you go back to the compound, it seems like no time has passed. What are you doing to me, movie? You're messing with my head.
Maybe that editor was just trying to pass the blame. Maybe he did edit it really bad. Really edited this movie really badly because, there was so many head-scratching spots. So you've actually enlightened me on a lot more things than I actually realised at the time, Trevor, so thank you. But I'm glad it wasn't just me, finding a lot of confusion in this movie. So, I wouldn't be surprised if it is subplots or pages of dialogue that were left out or something like that, because that would be the only way. Or we just put it down to it exists in its universe.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to follow this movie for a while, but to be honest, it wore me down. So my observation is actually what was happening in each scene really, as I go to my notes, get more and more vague because I couldn't keep up.
Oh, it's so funny you say that. Worry about the same too. I've even got a note here going from here on. I got very, very lost. Especially when they started bringing in talk of over thrusters and stuff like that. Well, actually, as we started getting sort of to the second half, it sort of felt a little bit more. You know how you've got the climactic part of an action film, I suppose, and I suppose it felt a bit more, I don't know, coherent in that respect, but still, it was too late. I'd already been so confused for the last hour, so when the last 40 minutes are happening, you're just sort of like, as you said, it's I can't keep up.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about, things happen that you don't know what, or they seem to have no context. I believe there's a bit because 3 bad aliens just basically waltz straight into Buckaroo's compound, but when the good alien jumps the fence, he immediately gets tranquilized the second he lands on the ground, so good guarding there. And then they're trying to hunt down these bad aliens once they realize that they're there, and they're going through this room, and one of the characters with them, one of the visiting characters, just goes, "What's with the watermelon?"
Oh,
and
that's
watermelon just sitting there. I'll tell you later. No one ever does.
Yeah.
I thought, is that watermelon going to have relevance later? Nope. It's like the weird brain from the other dimension in a jar. It's just kind of there, and then it's gone, never to be mentioned again.
Because I think even there's a part later on where they're going. I wonder if it's in that same. No, it's in the later scene where they're walking into there's it looks like a kid's mobile, but it's a toy spinning around, and I think it's a similar thing like that where they go, "Oh, why did I have a toy in here?" or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but you get the feeling that half of this was made as an in-joke for the cast and crew, because the rest of us had no idea, especially that watermelon. Yeah, but I think it was Jeff Goldblum actually that was the one who says that. Might have been when the two of them going through. Yeah. I thought that at the time. I'm like, oh, it's a reference to something, perhaps.
Yeah, and look, the second that they give this transponder, which is the magical device that lets them cross dimensions, that of course the aliens want, so they can get across the 8th dimension and get home. As soon as they give it to Penny, Ellen Barkin, they're thinking, okay, they've immediately set up how she's going to be the damsel in distress and get kidnapped. There she goes on the stolen helicopter.
Yeah.
That was the one thing not guarded in the compound.
Yeah, strange.
And did Clancy Brown actually die? Because you don't actually... You see Justin looking sad and he kind of slumps there, but when they do the final credit, he's back in there with the rest of the gang.
Yeah, I thought that too, actually, but again, too many questions.
Yeah, it wasn't a very convincing death scene if it was. And then he's back at the end. I did actually like. I don't know. I've got to admit, I had a bit of a fangirly moment when you had Clancy Brown and Jeff Goldblum side by side talking War of the Worlds. There's something in me because I'm a big fan of both those actors, and talking. One of the few bits that made sense where they were talking. How War of the Worlds was actually real, and these aliens did come in at I can't remember the actual name of the place where War of the Worlds took place in my head. But then they got to Orson Welles and they made him change his tune. I thought that was actually clever, and to have these two actors discover it and talk about it, I was just like, that's so good.
You have had a few fangirling moments over a few different movies, so I'm glad you managed to find one in this one too. But look, I did appreciate the references to War of the Worlds. So, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take any fangirl moments I can get in a lot of these
especially
movies.
with some of these movies we watch. But I know you mentioned the whole setting up for the damsel in distress, and even though it seemed quite obvious, it was kind of it was a welcome change because, as I said earlier, like it kind of felt like it was a bit more coherent. It was giving it a bit of climax, giving it a bit of a climactic ending for the film, or some kind of, because up till this point it was just a whole heap of messy ideas just thrown at you. So I felt that it kind of, okay, we knew something has to be done, she has to be rescued, we have to get the overthruster, I think it is, from her.
Yep.
So that kind of, by the time it felt like the movie was finally getting back on track. By the time it doesn't mean that it wasn't less confusing, but it kind of gave it a bit more of that fantasy adventure structure when it sort of brought that in as the plot. So
yeah, but even with that, they suddenly had the scenes where they cut to the President of the United States in a weird sort of hospital bed frame that rotated around.
I didn't know what that was, and it was all lit up too. Like it was all red in the inside too. I don't know.
I mean, really, any of those scenes with like the President. I know the only reason I had that there was so the Secretary of Defense, who apparently was having the bad guys that were like contracted to build like a fighter or something for the American government. So the only reason to have the scenes with the president and him were to set up the later scenes where he kind of acts, he goes in acting as a distraction, saying, "Where's my fighter?" But it actually seems like that's the only thing he really cares about once he's inside. Like he sees Ellen Barkin tied to a table being tortured, and he's just sort of going, "Oh, whatever. Where's my plane?" It's like, what are you doing? Were you meant to be weren't you just meant to be a distraction? But you're now taking this like totally seriously. You just want your plane. You don't care about anything else. The world's going to be destroyed if these guys don't get stopped, because the good aliens don't want them back. So they're happy to blow up the entire Earth to stop the bad aliens from getting back to Planet 10. And this woman's being tortured right in front of you, but you really just want your plane. Wow.
Yeah, we see where his preferences lie, but I do have to laugh talking about Ellen Barkin's or Penny's torture or whatever it is. I thought it was so funny. Like, first I'm thinking, are they rubbing baby oil all over her? And I think in the couple of lines later they say something about it's actually take her and the honey somewhere else. I think she's honey all over or something. I'm like, what the hell?
He's putting honey in her arm, and then there's a brief shot. He's holding like a dish full of ants.
Oh, that's
with the implication that he was going to tip the ants on her arm. And you're thinking, that's an odd form of torture for these aliens, because when they finally do have her strapped up, and they leave her to die by putting a very slow-moving slug-type thing that obviously is going to be stopped.
Yeah, in the nick of time.
Well, you think it's going to be stopped in the nick of time. It's actually stopped before it even reaches her waist. when Jeff Goldblum and Buckaroo... New Jersey, that was Jeff Goldblum's character. That's right, New Jersey. And Buckaroo Banzai turn up.
But he pretty much just flicks it away like it's an afterthought.
Jeff Goldblum just goes, "Oh, don't touch it," and then Peter Weller, Buckaroo Banzai, immediately just reaches over, just picks it up and throws it over his shoulder. You go, well, that was anticlimax.
Yeah, and it's like even as it's slowly getting towards her going, down the ramp towards her. Even she doesn't even seem like she even has that look on her face, like I'm going to get rescued before this thing gets me. So,
Well, it almost looked like she was just asleep. Like she'd been strapped up there for a while, and she just basically just went, "Oh, they'll get to the bit where they rescue me eventually. I'm just gonna have a nap."
well, I even got the vibe that just from the point of view of her as an actress, they've filmed this scene a few times. Like she's just gone, "Oh, I'm going to be lying here in the background. I'm just gonna." I kind of got that vibe from her that she'd just give it up. I might just have a bit of a sleep.
Pretty much. Oh my
god, this is doing my head in even trying to remember everything. An assault on the senses. So if it's sounding confusing, listeners, think about us that had to watch it.
If we talk about all the bizarre things that happen, we will be here for hours, literally hours. So much is crammed in such a short space of time, and there's just so many sudden scene changes. Buckaroo getting tortured and John Lithgow using electric shocks. At one point, I believe they even have him actually electroshocking Buckaroo's groin.
I can't remember that.
For the hell of it. But then when the alarms go off, the second John Lithgow turns away, Buckaroo just basically lets himself out of this contraption and walks off. So you weren't tied up?
Yeah, so you could have got up.
You could have just got up and kicked him over and walked out at any time. So that means you chose to be tortured, Buckaroo. I'm really concerned about you.
Yeah. I don't know. It's too much partying at those rock concerts that he puts on. I don't know. He's not making good decisions.
Well, maybe that's part of his rock and roll lifestyle. He enjoys the electric shock. I don't know. What am I saying?
I don't
know.
Oh my god. Maybe he preferred the honey torture, but he didn't get it. So the honey and ants torture. Oh gosh. But yeah, if we sound ridiculous, listeners, yeah, you can imagine. But I did read going into this. It's a few reviews or quotes that said, this is one of those movies that really needs a second viewing, and I think I can kind of appreciate that a bit more now.
Well, my head's starting to feel like it was feeling towards the end of this movie, so that's
saying
I
something.
guess that's the sign. Let's just push through, because if we mention anything, so the Secretary of Defense, for some reason, he's now a bad guy, and this random kid that turns up because he's part of like the Buckaroo Banzai version of the Boy Scouts.
Oh, yeah, the kid with the rifle.
And just turns up with an assault rifle and basically just goes, "You're a bad guy, you're coming with me." A kid with an assault rifle, not a good look nowadays.
Yes.
When John Lithgow tries to use his device that doesn't work to go through to the dimension, that crashes through a wall and starts flying through the air, and Buckaroo and the good alien have to chase him in what appears just to be a small escape pod. It actually gets jettisoned, yet the small escape pod is armed, but the main ship isn't.
Yeah, strange.
And it doesn't take much to, he works out how to fly it very, very quickly, and it doesn't take much to actually blow up the main alien spaceship. And the spaceship, the escape pod with the aliens, was apparently equipped with a parachute as well.
Yeah. As he slowly goes down in his slow-mo drop down, and even that felt so 80s as well.
He's just going, okay, that all happened, but does that mean we're at the end of the movie? No, we're not, because the electrostatic shock, or whatever they called it, that let him see the real aliens, is useful because it's going to let him give Ellen Barkin a kiss that will bring her back to life. And apparently, because we established earlier, she looked like his dead wife.
Yeah,
I believe
that was true. I wonder how she feels about that. I don't know.
But
not necessarily a way to win a woman over, is it?
No, and there was never really any chemistry between them. I mean, the main thing was she spent most of her time panicking because she kept doing stuff she thought would get her in trouble.
And I think when they finally do have that last kiss after the whole static and all that sort of stuff. It felt very rough. Like literally, like they grabbed each other and let's just get this over and done with. Yeah, there was definitely no chemistry between them at all. But I wouldn't necessarily look at them as characters that are sort of, well, they're love interests, but I wouldn't say that they're sort of your romantic leads as such. So I don't think that really even touches on that at all.
No, but then there's a shot. The good aliens up in orbit are basically just watching what's happening in that trailer on their monitors. So I was like, you voyeuristic aliens. My goodness, what are you doing?
Makes you wonder what they're doing with us humans. Watching
us. That's just right. And that's when we get the fade out to Buckaroo Banzai will return and the adventures of Buckaroo Banzai against the World Crime League, and
hence the uptown. That's the uptown girl bit.
yeah, and the whole lively 80s synth pop music as they're all marching around and everyone's coming in one by one. Jeff Goldblum looked ecstatic to be there. By the way, when he turned up, he just had this huge grin on his face, and then Clancy Brown steps in. You go, weren't you dead? Yeah, I was sure you were dead. And they're doing little skips and little hop steps and just. It was like the ending of a TV show. I mean, really,
and it felt
the
like
ending of a cheesy 80s TV show.
And it's almost like almost like you could have expected another movie to have followed, just the way that they were almost promoting it. But one thing I appreciated as end credits, it wasn't just that, and then credits that kept going afterwards. It was pretty much a couple of minutes, and they pretty much were on screen the entire credits. So it made them whiz by pretty fast, better than your typical black screen with white text. So it was a bit of a welcome change.
Yeah, I mean, solid cheese through the closing credits certainly helped in some way, and I think even the little bit of credits that were after that happened and they faded to black, there was just the synth pop. The synth going over the top of those last closing credits. It was just like, okay, if I wasn't already reverted to my 80s self, this has me wearing the ripped jean, the chambray jacket, and my skinny black leather tie all over again.
So I'm half expecting you to have a mullet or perm next time I see you. I'm not sure.
Well, if I ever do try for a second viewing of this movie, then it
could be possible.
It may be too late. That will be the final straw.
Well, if you do watch this movie again, which I'm sure, look, it seems to be begging for a second viewing, but if you do watch it and work out a few more things, please let me know. I've still got a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah. But hey, we've got the line at the end again. The MGM line came back right at the end.
Oh, it's always good. I always say it gives a bit of class, but maybe not for this movie. I don't know. I'll use that loosely.
Okay, well, that's got us to the end of this movie. Look, I know there are dozens, literally dozens and dozens of more things we could mention about this movie, but I think it's best we move on to our final thoughts. Now, I did pick The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension. So, Kristian, what are your thoughts about any redeeming features within this movie and if the movie was redeemable overall? Okay, now this was a really tricky movie. Like, I've got a pretty short attention span, so it's always a good test. If a movie's got lots of editing, lots of quick editing, which this movie essentially does, I thought it would win me over. But look, I felt that this movie had too many ideas crammed into a movie, making it virtually incoherent. And I think it is, really calling out for a second viewing, whether I think I could sit through it again. Like, I found it quite messy, and I can see why it failed overall. Like, it was going for that Flash Gordon Tank Girl sort of feel, but I think it unfortunately lost and it failed in that respect. So I tried so hard, and it's probably sacrilege to say this, but Trevor, I'm going to have to say it's irredeemable. I couldn't redeem this movie. I felt it was too much of an incoherent mess. Maybe a second viewing would change my mind, but I just couldn't do it for this time round. Rightio. Well, I'm looking at my very first comment in my notes, which is, what the hell did I just watch? I mean, I could see some good ideas in there, and I think the concept was sound, if a bit on the cheesy side. But look, there was just too much. There were too many characters, Too many sudden scene changes, too much over-the-top actors, and some of the acting was seriously bad. The president, the Secretary of Defense, some of the aliens, they were just absolutely awful. And, I mean, there was actually too much Ellen Barkin. She added nothing to the movie and was really only there to be the damsel at the end of the day, but she was shoehorned into a lot of the movie, I know, to try to make her a more dynamic character, but it just didn't work. And look, I initially wanted to like this movie. I kind of liked where it was going, but at the end of it, I was just exhausted with a sore head. So I'm with you, Kristian. I can't redeem it. It doesn't feel right, and I don't think I can bring myself to watch this movie again anytime soon.
Wow.
So it's definitely it's not redeemable.
Oh wow! Because I thought you'd redeem it, Trevor. You know, probably going in before our conversation. Anyway, I've got a bit more of an idea since we've been talking. But yeah, I thought it would. I thought maybe I just wasn't getting it. But interesting that we both felt the same, and I'm sure that would be a lot of the reason why it failed as well. So, but I'm sure it has its fans. So. And they can keep watching it, because I don't know if I want to really sit down for that second viewing anytime soon.
Fair enough. Well, funny you mentioned that, because it does have its fans. Now, like I said, with the Rufus Project, we aim to redeem a movie. We couldn't do it in this case, but I do like to finish on a nice positive review. So the title of this review is Laugh While You Can, Monkey Boy, which is a nice reference to a quote that John Lithgow says in the movie. So, hammy, campy awesomeness. Fantastic ensemble cast fully embrace their wacky roles in this hilarious offbeat movie. I laughed so hard, I almost peed in my pants. 5 stars.
Okay, well, there are the fans out there, because I did actually read somewhere that you either loathe it or absolutely love it. So I can see what end of the scale we are and that reviewer would be. So each to their own.
Absolutely. So yeah, we couldn't redeem the Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension, Kristian. So maybe we should be looking forward to what we're watching next time.
Oh gosh, your game asking me. I know it's my chance to do it after our last one. Well, Titanic 2. Tune in, listeners, for our verdict on that. So now, this is a movie I wouldn't have thought to ever choose, and it's probably one that, it's probably quite a strange choice for me. But now I went to America about a month ago and did the Universal Backlot tour. And they mentioned one of the sets was used in this movie, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I thought this movie was a huge dud, one of the biggest flops of all time. Why are they referencing it on the Universal tour? So we're going to go back to 2009. Now, this came out just after Sandra Bullock had won her Academy Award for The Blind Side. She followed it up with what people said. She followed up her best movie essentially with her worst movie, and people said, how could she have released 2 totally different movies in 1 year? So even now, as I look through on IMDb, I'm reading people saying, welcome to Sandra Bullock's worst movie of all time. So we're going to go back to the 2009 movie All About Steve with Bradley Cooper and Thomas Hayden Church and Sandra Bullock. So I'm interested to see if it's really as bad as everyone says it is.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, I am actually pretty much unfamiliar with that one, but I'm certainly willing to give it a go. I've just put up a little bit of information now.
Look at the poster, Trevor. You'll see exactly what I mean. People were going, you just won an Academy Award and this was your next movie. So I think that from that alone, I'm interested. But there's some mixed reviews on there. Like, there are some people saying it's fantastic. So I'm thinking it might be in the Jiggly or Gigli league of film. So we shall see.
We shall indeed. Now, if anybody wants to check out All About Steve before our next podcast, I've had a little dig. So in Australia, it can be bought or rented through Google Play, the Microsoft Store, PlayStation, YouTube, or iTunes. So there's plenty of options there for anyone who wants to check it out.
Fantastic. And and there might be, hopefully we might have convinced some people not to watch or to watch Buckaroo Banzai, but we'll leave the decision up to you.
Absolutely. So if you do decide to watch Buckaroo Banzai or All About Steve, we of course do want to hear what your thoughts are. So you can get in touch with us. You can head to our homepage, rufusproject.com, and leave a comment below this very episode. You can find the Rufus Project super duper easily on Twitter or Facebook. You can send us an email to podcast@rufusproject.com. And you also find the Rufus Project on YouTube as well, where would also certainly welcome comments. So we're certainly happy to hear from anyone who has any thoughts on the movies we watch, or even has suggestions for movies we could watch in the future.
Definitely, and as we've found with the many seasons we've done, we're still probably not even scraping the bottom of the barrel yet. There's still many more, I suppose, cinematic catastrophes and box office studs, or whatever you want to categorise them as, that are still worth looking at. So we always welcome suggestions as well.
Absolutely. But to move on from movies that are potentially redeemable, but aren't at the end of the day in this particular case, I understand, Kristian, that you've got some pretty good movie screenings and other events coming up very, very soon.
Definitely. With June pretty much finished. We're going to go with July coming up. We've got some great 80s movies. So you can't go past the 80s movies at Metro Art. So we've got Never Ending Story, Labyrinth, Karate Kid, Stand By Me, Clue back on the big screen. Very rare screening there. Pretty in Pink. Well, God, this is all going off the top of my head. It's coming up in July. And the return of the Kate Bush Wuthering Heights Day, where we all put on a red dress and raise funds for DV Connect. That's happening on the 14th of July at Bedford Park, Spring Hill. And I'm also hosting an ABBA trivia night on the 22nd of July to coincide with the release of Mamma Mia 2 in cinemas. Whether the movie's going to be good, who cares? I'm going to put an ABBA night on. That's the main thing. So for more details about upcoming events, head to christianfletcher.com or Christian Fletcher Events on Facebook. There's just too many to mention here.
Absolutely. I'm hoping to get to Wuthering Heights Day myself. So that could be a fun place for a bit of a catch-up.
Yeah, definitely.
I've done it the last few years. It is absolutely awesome. So if you can get to Bedford Park in Brisbane on July 14th in a Wuthering Heights red dress, please do so.
And it's raising money for a great cause, and it just seems to be getting bigger and bigger every year. And as we've found, Trevor, even if it rains, they all still turn up. So so don't be fooled. Rain, hail or shine, the event still happens. So get along there on the 14th of July because it's for a great cause.
Absolutely. So moving on from great causes and great fun to the other Rufus Project stuff. That's not a good segue, is it? So if you want to have more podcasts, you can also check out the What the History podcast that I do with my wife Susie, where we get a couple of bizarre bits of history every fortnight to make you say what the history. That's a nice educational and short podcast that you can also listen to with your kids. It's lots and lots of fun. You can also find other fun stuff on our YouTube channel. So it's not just YouTube versions of the podcasts. I also do 1 credit challenges where I take on old arcade games and old pinball titles and see how I go with just 1 credit. Live stream those to YouTube. And of course, they're all watchable afterwards. In recent times, I have been doing what I call the State of Indifference video streams, where a certain sports ball event that's quite big in Australia has been happening. So I've been celebrating my state of indifference about that. For round 1, I had a game of Worms against my wife Susie and streamed that live to YouTube. The one just gone, I did a 1 credit challenge evening. Still finalising what I'm going to do for the 3rd one. So certainly something to keep an eye out for on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, where you'll get all the updates.
Very exciting. So everything's got you covered.
Absolutely.
So from bad movies to that.
So on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up. We may not have been able to redeem a Buckaroo Banzai, but I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed our chat, even though my head still hurts.
Oh, yes. Always a pleasure, Trevor. And as we say, if the movies aren't any good, the chats are always a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I've got no idea what to think about All About Steve. I'm going into this one completely blind with no expectations. So that's going to be, I'm actually looking forward to it.
Well, yeah, I'm going in complete. Well, I've been doing a little bit of a scroll just as we've been talking of some of the reviews and people saying they absolutely love it, and then people saying it's the worst movie ever made. So yeah, a bit across the board there. So I'll be interested to see what we come out with. And gosh, we need to get a redeemable after this week.
It'll be good. It'll be good. So yeah. On that note, I think we'll definitely wrap things up. Thank you for listening through, and I mean, from our point of view at the moment, I apologise if you watched Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension in preparation for this podcast. Hopefully, All About Steve will be a better experience for you.
But not promising anything. We'll just wait and see.
Absolutely not. No promises. So yeah, until next time, enjoy watching whatever you enjoy watching, and we will catch you then.
Mary,
Yes?
do you ever stop working long enough to, like go out, go on a date?
Oh, well, I have a date this evening. Yeah, Steve. His mother probably thinks he's gay. So my parents are no doubt pimping me out to test his sexuality. Thanks. Better get going. I'm gonna fall in love and register at Barnes & Normal, have a beautiful wedding, little tiny plastic bride and groom on top of a cake, posing like this.
If you ever want to see any grandchildren, you're gonna have to burn those damn boots.
For Mary,
Mayor, your date is here.
He's hot.
it was love at first sight.
Hey, Mary. I'm Steve.
He's so not gay.
For Steve,
Oh, wow.
Oh, you okay?
it was not.
Yeah. There's a hurricane off the coast of Texas.
I gotta go to work. I really wish you could be there.
This fall,
I'm going to go meet Steve at his next job. Yeah, yes, it's a storm.
she's hitting the road.
Stop, please! Moon pies! Want to go have Steve?
And the deeper they get,
You can't stay here.
But you said...
I'm a guy. We say things we don't mean.
Well, then, how do I know you mean what you're saying now when you said you didn't mean what you said?
the harder she's trying to win him over.
We're married, the blind date my parents set me up on.
You guys belong together.
From the producer of Miss Congeniality and 2 Weeks' Notice,
It's about choosing your path and just committing to it.
sometimes it takes a second chance to realize
We're gonna take a break. Sure enough, like you to join me.
Will Steve be there?
Who do you think sent me?
the ones who never fit in
She sees things that other people don't. And she doesn't pretend to be somebody that she's not.
are the ones who really stand out.
Mary, don't ever change. For anybody.
But he'll need to figure it out before it's too late. Sandra Bullock,
What? Did somebody fall in the mine?
All About Steve.
Boy? Oh boy.
Is it too good to be bad? So bad it's good. What's this movie do you think we should? It's got bad dialogue, dodgy creatures, but we want to know what the redeeming features.
Boy? Oh boy.
Kristian and Trevor on the case, watching movies from all over the place. IMDb says it's bad, but we want to know, is there fun to be had?
Boy? Oh boy.
Redeeming features.